welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so excited we're spending this time here today. We have a phenomenal show coming right up with special guest, Dr. Linda Backman, and she's here today to talk to us about her book, The Evolving Soul. Now, Dr. Linda is a psychologist and regression therapist, and she's been in private practice for over 40 years. She guides individuals in soul regression hypnotherapy to access their past and in-between lives. And I can't wait to talk to her about that. So in this way, she assists people to more fully recognize who they are as a soul. During the time we don't incarnate, Dr. Linda also helps us to understand what our soul's intention is for the next life. So let's welcome to the show Dr. Linda Backman.
Thank you so much, Marianne. It's great to be with you.
What a pleasure it is to have you here. And I know your book's been out for some time, but gosh, this topic is always on the top of people's minds when we talk about our soul, just as a society is how we are moving forward. And of course, past life regression.
Yes, exactly. I mean, that is the basic work that I've done for about 25 years, guiding regression. I'm a psychologist by training and fell into regression work after about 15 years of doing general psychology work.
Well, and I'd love for you to share with us your story and how you added regression into your practice, because I found it to be just a fascinating story.
Well, and I always believe, Marianne, that, what happens is guided at a higher level, so I have no doubt that what happened was meant to happen. But to try to make it not too long of a story, so I was rolling along in my psychology practice about 25 years ago, as I always say, kind of minding my own business. I knew a little bit about reincarnation, but it really wasn't a subject I'd ever delved deeply into. I had been focused for many years on death, dying, and grief work. So, long story short, I was in a group practice. I had a colleague, my original colleague, with whom we built the group, was a man, 14 years younger than I, and sadly, at about the age of 31, he was diagnosed with a serious type of lung cancer. About 18 months later, the cancer took his life. And, from a human perspective, that was incredibly sad and hard and all of that. But for me, what happened within a day or two of his passing was that I began to feel his energy all around me. I had, honestly, Marianne, I had no doubt that I could feel him. I didn't know how that worked. I'd never experienced it before. I started sensing his communication, and at the same time, he started showing me scenes of past lives that we had shared. So I thought that was bizarre. I mean, I thought it was fascinating and bizarre. I asked my husband about it. My husband was a university professor. And I said, do you think this is crazy? And lo and behold, which surprised me, because we'd already been married for 20 or 25 years, but never having discussed reincarnation, my husband said to me, no, I don't think it's weird. And he said, the reason I don't think it's weird is because only now do I remember, my husband said, that as a boy, I uncovered my past life spontaneously, but I blocked it out because I didn't think anybody would believe me. So I began studying, Marianne, learning more about reincarnation, learning about why we live one life to the next, studying past life regression, and then studying, you might say, a deeper, expanded version of regression where we not only uncover significant past lives, significant to our soul's evolution, but we work also at the soul level. The client works at their soul level with their guides. So that's how I got into all of this.
Well, and I find it so fascinating that your husband was so open to it, because you both are doctors, to be able to have that common thread, I'm sure probably made such a big difference.
In certain ways, as you might imagine, it changed our life. Our life went off very much in a spiritual direction. 25 years now, later, our life is spiritually focused. We know a lot about our past lives. We know a fair amount about why we agreed to be together, in current life. We know about our karma that we're working on in life today with each other. We also know about our dharma. We know what we've accomplished in the past that we bring into body today. So yes, it's rich and actually quite wonderful.
Well, and it's perfect because you both have such a complementary view to the center that you have, the Raven Heart Center in Boulder, Colorado, where I'm sure that people can come, they can learn more about themselves in an overall setting.
That's correct. I mean, people come for regression. They come to take regression training. I also travel about 50% of the time within the United States and outside the U.S. So I'm in various regions where, for people who don't find it easy to get to Colorado, they have an opportunity to either experience a workshop or have a regression. But yes, I mean, my husband ultimately left academia, left higher education after almost 30 years, and has run our business for the last 12 to 14 years, and he's an administrator at heart. So I and we are fortunate to have that blend.
Yeah, to be able to work together in that capacity. Well, and so I know that you have several books. The Evolving Soul has been out for a little while, and you have a new book that's going to be coming out later this year. And so in talking about the Evolving Soul, what were some of the main inspirations when you wrote this book, kind of behind it?
Well, what happened is I had felt compelled to write a book for many, many years. And as you, I'm sure, know, given what you do, writing books is a commitment, is an endeavor. So I wrote my first book, and it was published in 2009. And basically, overall, all of my books are filled with client material. So I like to say the clients write the books. The client information that comes through in their regression is the mode that, fills the content of past life information. What about guides? What about our soul? How do we evolve? And all of that. So first book came out in 2009. That's a book entitled Bringing Your Soul to Light. That was just very much a foundation covering all kinds of topics related to past lives and soul. And then, a few years went by, and I think it's probably fair to say I became a little bit more brave. And I thought, okay, Linda, you've got to step out further on the edges of writing about what you hear from clients that is not, you might say, not quite as basic. So then I started writing about things like, can we have two lives simultaneously? If we've had, it is not very common to have historically documentable lives, but if we do, what does that mean? How do we deal with it? Can we have lives not on the earth? It's important for people to know absolutely positively that many of us have had what I call interplanetary lives and what that means. So the second book, The Evolving Soul, was me kind of getting, I probably wouldn't say this anymore at this point, but getting what I thought fringier. It's like, okay, Linda, you're hearing these spontaneous pieces of information from your guides, from your clients and their guides, and so you need to put this into writing. So that's how The Evolving Soul came to be, which was published in 2014.
Yeah, and move from there. Well, and you talk about so many fascinating things in there, and it is like the next level up. It's not necessarily a beginner's guide, but I love how you talk about like communicating with spirit guides. And I think a lot of times when people look at that, there can be a little bit of confusion of, am I talking to my spirit guide? Am I really just, hearing voices and need a padded room? Which is it?
Right. Yeah. I always teach about intuition. And I say that because many people, when they think about intuition, first of all, a lot of people will say to themselves, as I said to myself for years and years, oh, I'm not intuitive. That's X well-known medium or channel that writes books or stands on a stage and is so good at it. And so I had to learn that I was intuitive. So I work with clients, helping them to understand all of us are intuitive, but we often don't know how to tap into our intuition, and we cast it aside or we disbelieve it. So the average person thinks that intuition means, okay, when I get intuitive information, it's going to be a bit like closing my eyes and seeing pictures in my mind of my guide or my beloved grandmother on the other side, or a past life. Well, sometimes we do receive intuitive information through what I'm talking about called clairvoyance. But there are other ways we're intuitive that we don't acknowledge and validate and strengthen. Many of us are intuitive through our emotions. We can pick up on the emotions of someone else. We can pick up on the emotions of a past life. That intuition causes us to have certain feelings. Many of us are intuitive through symptoms in our body, like if our guide's trying to get our attention, they cause a pressure in a certain part of our body. Or if a past life is trying to come through, it causes a slight cough or a feeling in the middle of your back or a physical feeling that ties to what happened in the past life. Then, besides sort of hearing our guides, or what we might call clairaudience, what people tend to not think about at all is that we are intuitive through our thoughts. So we think we're making up those thoughts, but it's like, well, okay, we keep thinking about, I need to call so-and-so, I need to call so-and-so, or I need to text so-and-so, and that comes forward about, 3 to 5 times in a day. Then I would say to people, go ahead, contact that person, because what you're probably going to find out is they've been reaching out to you energetically, and it's showing up purely through thought.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. Like when I first started hearing my spirit guides, it would sound like me. So it took a while to be able to discern what was them and what was actually my own separate thought process.
Right. That's exactly how it works, as well as at times one of our guides, maybe even better said, at all times. So let me back up a step. We have more than one guide. None of us have just a guide. We have a team of guides, and our team of guides is basically led by, our primary guide. But among our team of guides is our higher self, or is our soul self, our soul energy that we don't bring into body, because we don't bring 100% of our soul energy into body when we're born, because our soul energy is so strong, it would basically blow the circuits of our physical body. So occasionally, and I don't know for sure, Marianne, when you started hearing your own voice, but it could be that that's your higher self giving you guidance.
That's so true. Yeah. And a lot of people don't consider that. I never had.
Totally. And, what I love, I love, sharing what I've learned, blah, blah, blah. But I always want to give credit to every single client and the guides of those clients that I've worked with over about, 25 years or so, because what I share with you that I've learned isn't because I plucked it out of the air or read it in a book. It's because this is what I've heard from clients spontaneously, where I'm not giving the information to the client. The client's giving me the information. So that's why I know that our higher self is, I would say virtually always, one of our guides.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's so interesting. I've had a regression done, and I know it's an experience. So being the person that's facilitating that, I can imagine it's an experience for you as well.
I learn something every single time. It's truly a blessing for me to sit with a client because I get to follow their journey, not only into their past life, but I get to follow their journey to work at their soul level, to connect with their guides. I feel gifted every single time I work with a client because I'll just say, not only are the sessions, of course, for the client to move forward in their current life, working on their karma and working on their dharma, but I know that my guides are teaching me by bringing certain clients, into my practice, because not only do I love working with, particular clients overall, but the clients come in to teach me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm sure each of them has a specific, not really a message, but in kind of some way a message, that relates to you as well.
Yes, and of course, some more than others. I've had some rare circumstances where when I'm guiding the longer regression, that is past life but includes working at the soul level, on occasion the client will pause as they're receiving input from their guides and learning about their life purpose, or learning about souls with whom they incarnate frequently, or whatever. And at times, again rare times, the client will pause and then they'll say, "Linda, my guide would like to talk to you." And part of me wants to say, "No, this is your session. This is my job to facilitate and hold space and help you download as much content as possible." On the other hand, I always want to honor that the guide may want to do that, not just for me, but whatever comes forward in the commentary for me always relates back to the client. So that does happen on rare occasion.
Yeah, that must be pretty fascinating. Well, can you share a story with us? Because I know that, like maybe a client story that you can share with us, that someone has gone through the regression process and just some of the healing that they've received in this lifetime from having that process done.
Yeah, I'll start with one that comes to my mind. Usually what happens, if we have some kind of a fear or phobia in life today, and it can be really intense. I mean, it can be not a minor, little passing kind of fear or phobia. So two things, two sort of themes come to my mind, and often these are clients who are women versus men. I'll give an example about another theme that sometimes comes up for men. But let me just say, probably the listeners know this. If you're a woman today, you've surely been a man before. If you're a man today, you've surely been a woman before. So, sometimes that minorly weirds clients out when they're a woman or they're a man and they dive into a past life where they are in the opposite gender body. But for women, a theme I find a lot is that, let me see how to characterize this simply. So the woman who's my client is nervous about forging ahead, let's just say, into a new endeavor in her current life. She's been asked to come give a talk somewhere, or she has a new job opportunity, and something's making her nervous because the new job opportunity seems like it's she doesn't want to put herself out so much in the forefront, or she's not really capable, or what will people think if she takes this new step? Over and over and over, I have clients, again, I don't know, I could try to surmise why, but they're often women, female clients, where they go into a past life and they discover that in their past life they had a great loss or a great trauma. Their beloved spouse died quite young. Their child died quite young. It's usually some significant loss of some sort. And what happens is, in the past life, they're shown that they just completely caved in. Like they went into deep depression in the past life, and they almost stopped living their life, even though they didn't literally stop. It's not. I'm not talking about that they took their life. So they just let go of being progressive and moving forward in their life. So what the guides are showing them is, you can't do that this time. You can't. We don't want you to go, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. I had this great trauma, or I had an accident that left me with some kind of disability. The client in life today has a great opportunity, and they're to grab hold of that opportunity and move forward. But the caving in energy, if you will, from the past life is strong, and they're afraid to move forward. So the past life, it's always instructive. It's always transformative.
Well, and I love how once people find out that kind of information, let's say someone's been afraid of the water all their life, and then do a past life regression and find out it's because they had a drowning in a past life that's affected them still to this life. But then finding that information kind of sets them free in a way.
It's often like a key in a lock. It's like they don't know why they've always been afraid of X, or, had X physical problem. Obviously, our past lives can show up in relationships, in body symptoms, and can show up in body symptoms that are literal, like a literal organic, you might say, problem, or our past lives can show up in what we might call phantom pain, phobias, somebody who's been an attorney for 17 years, but they've always wanted to do, fine art. They've always wanted to learn to work in acrylics or watercolor, whatever it might be, and they think that's crazy. It's because they're meant to take that step. Just Marianne, as I was meant to take the step that I did. And, I'll just say briefly for the listener's sake, at first when I started learning about the soul and past lives, I thought to myself, well, psychologists don't do this kind of work. All of my referrals that come from medical doctors and, these formal professional people, will dry up because they're going to think I'm a charlatan. They're going to think I've just, jumped into the deep end. But I couldn't help myself. I knew this was the direction my heart, my intuition, and all of me wanted to go in that, in that direction.
Yeah, well, we're so glad that you did because, my goodness, the wealth of information that's coming from your experience is helping so many other people on their journey.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah, it might be useful because I'm sure it's always the case maybe that you have more female listeners than men. But let me, if it's okay, I want to just give a brief example of a common past life issue that comes up for male clients. Just because I don't want to leave men out, because I think that obviously gender is only, body deep, if you will. And so let me just, I'll make this short, but let me just share. And again, I want to underscore that female clients don't always have the kind of caving in and giving up that I described in past life when they were also women. And current men as clients don't always have this male past life issue. But example, so a male client comes in. He's always been interested in this common theme. He's always been interested in military history. He may be a Civil War buff. He may be a Napoleonic buff, whatever. At the same time, the male client is usually a very, you might say, progressed person who thinks war doesn't really serve any purpose, who believes in negotiation, who believes that battling isn't the way, battle between countries or groups or whatever isn't the solution. But he doesn't understand why he's always been so focused on the military or a military time period. We go into past life, and I just want to be sure I say to the listeners, I don't tell the clients anything about the past life. They tell me, I don't tell them. But we go into a past life where they were at the Battle at Gettysburg, or they were, in northern France during World War I, where all these nasty massacres occurred. And generally the client died in the massacre, though not always. But the client is left with this almost you might say a soul-level wound that is healed by understanding that they died in this pointless battle. And that's why they're anti-war in life today. But they need the content. They need the past life content to make it easier to release their current life struggles. Yeah.
That's just fascinating. And I've had friends, actually I'm thinking of a friend of mine who had a past life regression, and he could remember the ship he was on that sank in Pearl Harbor. So you just look at these different things, and every time he goes there, he has these strong emotions that come up from that. But it's really interesting when people do kind of dive into these things, just how this affects our current life.
That surprised me years ago. Sometimes I'll start off with a client, and they'll say, well, I don't know anything about my past lives, and I don't know if I can uncover a past life. So we start this little conversation, and I start asking them questions. And so I'll put this out for listeners because it might help them. So I start, asking them to consider certain things, like if someone gave you a 2-week paid vacation, everything's taken care of at home, your plants are watered, your animals are fed, your job is fine, your kids are fine, or whatever, but someone said, okay, I'm going to give you a free vacation for 2 weeks, and then I say to the person, where would you absolutely want to go on the planet? Or, it truly could also be off planet. That's going to tell them something too. Mm-hmm. But where would you absolutely want to go? And where would you absolutely not go, even though it's a paid vacation? Now, I also say to them, you can't just say you want to go lay on a beach, because all of us would just love to go lay in warm weather and, relax and read a book. But, where on the planet, whether you've been there or not in your current life, would you go, or would you absolutely refuse to go? That virtually always tells us where we've spent past lives, and they were rich and rewarding, or there's something that we're holding on to that was quite positive, or the complete opposite. They were challenging, painful, traumatic, and we just don't want to go back there, but we don't know why. So we can track our past lives even without regression.
Well, and you do something which I think that's fabulous, and I don't hear of many people do this. You do something called in-between lives regression. So what is that?
Okay. So I call that between lives soul regression. So what does that mean?
Oh, I just messed up the name for you, didn't I?
Okay. It's not a problem. It's not a problem. It's 4 words is hard to remember and keep straight. So I studied with a mentor years ago, and I learned I'd already learned how to guide past life regression. I learned how to guide what formally is called between lives regression. What does that mean? So it basically means the client goes into relaxation. We uncover a past life. It's the past life that the guides of the client want the client to uncover on that particular day in the regression, because the past life ties to current life in some way, the client experiences the ending of the life. They sense, they don't feel like they're choking because they have a lung ailment, or they don't literally feel an arrow in their back because it's a Old West past life. But they experience that they physically die in the past life, and they literally experience that the soul energy that kept them alive as that person leaves their body. Then we follow the journey into the spiritual realm as it happens every time we actually die. Our soul energy that caused our body to be alive returns and steps back into the greater whole of our higher self. And then, the term between lives just basically means the client then works at the soul level, learning about various things, and it is always up to the guides what they learn, but learning about who are my guides, what is my current life purpose, for what reason did I plan current life circumstances, who have I incarnated with repetitively, et cetera, and that's a between life soul regression.
Well, and I love how in the descriptions, because I've heard many of your other interviews that you've done and talks that you've done across the country, and how when the soul leaves the body, and they talk about whatever trauma it is they're going through, but when the soul leaves the body, they usually are up above the body, and then there's kind of this moment that they take to reflect.
Yes. Yes. Two comments about that. That I love that you've brought that forward. So, yes, and I think this. I'm convinced this happens literally when we die or when a loved one dies, and I say that because all of us have or will experience the passing of someone close to us. So the soul leaves the body. Often, if you're present with somebody who's close to dying or has just died, you can often sense whether their soul energy is still, within their body or has stepped out. And it doesn't necessarily connect exactly with the last, relate to the last breath. So our soul energy leaves the body at the, around the time of physical dying. The soul hangs around a bit, observing, supporting loved ones. Usually our soul doesn't just pop out and quickly return back into the higher realm. So there's a brief time also for the soul to evaluate what happened in the past life. And then there's another, in my opinion, really important step. When our soul leaves our body, when our soul is finished with a lifetime, we then come upon our main guides, a panel of guides, and those guides are very supportive, and at the same time, they want us to evaluate our past, the life that has just become a past life. They want us to evaluate, how did we do? What do we think went well? What do we think we did that we would change and wish we, hadn't done? They're not going to beat up on us necessarily, but they want an honest assessment of how a life went. Anytime we say, I wish I hadn't done X, Y, Z, then we have the chance, as probably most listeners know, then we have the chance to plan an upcoming life where we have the opportunity to not redo or not repeat what we did, actions we took in the past life that we're not going to take in a future life. And I would say this is just an important piece too. When an upcoming incarnation is planned, it's planned, but all the details aren't written in stone, because whenever we come into body, we always have human free will. We always have free will to make decisions that may or may not be in keeping with what we agreed to or what our guides wish we would choose to do.
Well, and I find that so interesting because we make all these plans. And then a lot of times we do put people like you in our path so that we can find out some of the things why different parts of our lives keep us stuck that help us then move forward.
Exactly. I mean, that's the beauty of regression is it's almost like regression. So if it's past life regression, then our guides are going to choose, usually it's one past life, our guides are going to choose details of a past life to show us so that we understand what we need to keep changing and balancing in our life today, which we'd call karma from the past. Or, and sometimes it's our guides want us to bring forward learning or accomplishments from past lives. They want us to bring that, what's called dharma, into our life today because we've already learned how to do this or how to do that or how to be this kind of person. So it's all about evolution. It's all about living one life to the next, evolving and transforming, balancing karma, and honoring our soul skills, our soul wisdom that we've gained in past lives.
Well, it's something that we want to keep in mind as we're going through our journey, and I love how, because it's a lot of times when you meet someone who's really gifted at being able to do past lives, such as yourself, take people through regressions, that it's not really always easy to get appointments with them, and you have to be in like the same vicinity. And I know that you actually can do that over the phone.
That is true. So just to make sure that's clear, I do guide past life regression by phone. I don't guide between lives regression by phone. Between lives regression is a much longer session. In a way, there's so much deep content that I don't feel comfortable not doing it in person. But yes, I guide past life regression by phone. I worked for many years guiding past life regression before I felt comfortable and felt like I kind of had, if you will, sharpened my skills enough to work at a distance where I'm not physically with the client and can't physically see the responses of the client. But yes, bottom line is I guide past life regression by phone.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Dr. Linda Backman in regards to her book, The Evolving Soul. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 123 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
There are nearly 2 million Americans living with amputation. Many live right here in San Antonio. Becoming an amputee can be scary, frustrating, isolating, but there's no reason to feel alone. The San Antonio Amputee Foundation is here to help support you and guide you toward resources such as home and car modifications and even prosthetic limbs. For more information or to make a donation, visit saamputee.org. We'll help you live a full, active life, one step at a time. San Antonio Amputee Foundation, healing limbs, hearts, and souls.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today talking with Dr. Linda Backman in regards to the evolving soul.
So, Dr. Linda, what is, and for a lot of people hear, these kind of keywords that are dropped, pre-birth blueprint. What does that mean?
Yeah, fancy language. We're always looking for terminology, and as I'm sure you know, authors create terminology to explain something. So, pre-birth blueprint. Okay. So, and I think in pictures. So I'll explain this kind of through an imagery kind of thing. So let's just say that you're not in body, that you're in, you might say, in between incarnations. What happens is, simplistically, your guides basically sort of, you might say, again, making this what we fancily call anthropomorphic, or it sounds like it's human. Your guides say to you as a soul, it's time. We think it's time for you to plan another incarnation. Now, remember, for listeners, the only way, and truly, this is what I've been told time and time again, the only way we grow as a soul, evolve, transform, gain wisdom as a soul, is by coming into body. So our guides say, all right, well, let's, here's a conference table. Let's sit down together. Let's discuss this upcoming life. And so there's a planning session, you might say, where a lot of details are planned. What karma are we going to intend to balance? What past life karma will we balance? As I said earlier in this wonderful interview, what dharma, what soul learning am I going to bring forward? Example would be, I'll give a quick example of that. When I first had this awareness of my colleague talking to me from the other side, what I know now is I understood the other side from past lives. In past lives, I've had shaman lives, I've had healer lives, I've also had traditionally religious lives. I've been a Catholic priest, and all of that. I already, to a degree, understood the soul and lifetime to lifetime. So that's part of my dharma that I brought into body with me today. So then, sitting at this conference table with our guides, we plan everything. Are we going to be male or female, and why? Are we going to be Caucasian or not, and why? I'll say, are we going to be gay or straight, and why? Are we going to be? Are we going to have more than average intelligence or not, and why? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's all planned. Who are our parents going to be? Who are our siblings going to be? And then people might wonder, well, how do you make those soul contracts with parents and siblings? Or anybody, grandparents, best friends, neighbors? It's an agreement. It's never, okay, soul X, you have to be my mother. Soul Y, you have to be my best friend from childhood on. So pre-birth blueprint means the bulk of the details of your life are planned. Obviously, some things don't change, from skin color to eye color to gender, intelligence, health, congenital anomalies, and things like that. But the intention of what you're going to work on karmically or bring in dharmically, that basically you can go against that. You can make choices against that. I suspect that if I hadn't let myself follow my passions when I learned about spirituality and reincarnation, and of course I had the beauty of, here's my husband who I never thought had any spiritual awareness or interest, who supports me all the way. That was all intended, but it was my choice. I think my guides would not have been, as best I know, would not have been very pleased with me if I'd said, no, I'm just going to stick with, conventional psychology. So, pre-birth blueprint, that is exactly, what that means.
Well, I'm so glad that you took the time to explain that to us, because I think a lot of times, like I was saying, people get a little confused about what is the pre-birth planning, how does that look, and how much control is it that we give ourselves on the other side to make sure it all happens the way it happens. And it sounds like there's just a lot of room for the human aspect of it.
There's absolutely the room for the human aspect, and I think that's a crucial, I'm glad you said that, Marianne, because a crucial aspect about, now I'm going to just bear with me, I'll be brief about this, but I'm going to wax slightly esoteric and, slightly political. So in order for humanity to evolve, each of us as a soul has to keep evolving. We see, I think probably everybody listening would agree, we have a whole variety of issues and problems on our planet. We have global warming. We have political problems. We have issues about guns or no guns or whatever. And, we see these young people right now tied to the shooting in Florida, stepping up, speaking their minds, being active. And this is how our planet will change, is whether you're young or you're not so young, living your life purpose or purposes and taking steps forward to let your intentions show in your life. So I think that's just so important. That's usually part of our pre-birth blueprint as well.
Mm. Well, and I know one thing that I'd love for you to expand on for us is the topic of soul pods. Just, so if you can share with us, what is that? And from a soul perspective, why do we have those?
Okay, good. So I like that term. Again, different authors have used different terms. Soul pod means that when we're a young soul, and there's nothing wrong with being a young soul, and there's nothing great or better than by, being a more experienced soul, because it's like first grade to second grade to third grade and so on. But when we're a young soul and we're just beginning our incarnational journey, we belong to a small group of souls, and those are going to be the souls that we will incarnate with most often. And I don't mean that with every member of our soul pod, in every lifetime, every member of our soul pod, that is approximately 10 to 20 souls, every soul pod member won't be in every lifetime. But almost always those people that we are so tight with, and it's always the opposite too, those people that we struggle the most with are usually either in our immediate soul pod of 10 to 20 souls, or you might say are in one of the pods that are in our neighborhood, are in our greater, you might say, sort of a whole complement of soul pods that are adjacent to each other. So I want everybody to make sure they think about it isn't a member of your soul pod that's going to be your most perfect romantic involvement. That may or may not be the case. And it isn't just who do you just resonate with so well that's in your soul pod. It could be who do you either have karma with that's not being worked out that would be in your pod or an adjacent pod, or who agreed to push your buttons in life today to push your learning. So that's soul pop.
So sometimes they can be the person that is doing the pushing of the buttons or challenging us, maybe in ways that feel uncomfortable in order for us to have that growth.
I won't go off into the story. It's probably too long for today's time that we have, but I had that. My mother's on the other side now. I had a pretty challenging relationship with my mother until I started realizing I asked her to be my mother. I asked her to push on certain things, and I had past lives with her where I had done some things that weren't the best choices, and I needed to balance that karma with her as my mother in life.
Balance out those scales. Well, I understand that you have a new book coming out here pretty soon. How exciting is that?
It is very exciting, and this is kind of for some people this may be unique material, but yes, in August I have a new book that will be published.
Ooh, what's it all about? Please share that with us.
So the title is Souls on Earth, Exploring Interplanetary Past Lives. And I'll just say people can find it. It's already on Amazon. If you want an autographed copy, you can pre-order from my website. So you can find it. It's just not quite available yet. What happened simplistically for me, Marianne, is that maybe 12 or so years ago, I started paying attention to the clients that were coming for regression. And I started realizing that about 50 to maybe 65% of my clients suddenly were clients that were discovering past lives not on the earth. Now, I knew prior to that as a soul that it's a possibility to have a past life not on the earth. But I hadn't had such a heavy influx of clients spontaneously going to past lives that happened not on the earth or what I call interplanetary. So this new book is all about what's unique about someone, obviously in body today, who's had a number of past lives not on the earth. What kind of wisdom and skills do they bring? Why are they here now? What do they struggle with in life today? I also touch on, because I think it's an important topic, there are a lot of children there are a lot of children on the earth today who are souls who've had many interplanetary past lives. They have great gifts, and at times they have some struggles. So the whole book is filled with material about clients who've had lives other than on Earth.
Well, that's I think it's so important that that you have this book and that we're here to talk about it just a little bit, because I know this book is going to be released at towards the end of this year. Is it August, I think?
Yeah, early August. About the 8th of August is the formal date.
About 8th of August, yeah. Because you often hear people say, gosh, I feel like I belong in a different world, or I don't even feel like I belong on this planet. You hear that. I mean, I know people that say that quite often, and so it's always kind of interesting. They probably feel like now they have a book written for them.
Yes, and, I find that's the case when the client comes in and I interview them, and they end up discovering an interplanetary past life. It's what you just said, Marianne. They at times, not always, but at times say to me, Linda, I've always felt like an alien here. And when I hear that in an interview, I zip it up. I don't say a word because I don't want to bias what's going to come forward. But I log that into my brain like, okay, is this going to be a client that discovers they've had often numerous non-Earth past lives, and what's the value of that? I talk a lot in this book about why do we have many souls embodied on Earth right now who have had many non-Earth lives.
Ooh, I can't wait to read more about that. and learn what that's all about. Because, I mean, when you know people that have this personally, you're like, well, wait a minute. I think what they're saying makes sense,
It certainly makes sense to me, and it has explained things to clients that were never explained about themselves before, and I find it quite fascinating and so timely because we have an influx of interplanetary souls right now, basically because we need their wisdom.
Well, I've got so many questions, but I'm going to table that for when the book is released because I don't want to be a spoiler.
Okay.
So we're going to table this discussion for when the book is out. We're going to definitely have you back to talk about your new book that's coming out. And do you know what the title is yet for the book?
Yes, the title is Souls on Earth, Exploring Interplanetary Past Lives.
That is pretty cut and dry. I like it.
Yeah, exactly. You know how that is. Titles have to be as clear-cut as hopefully we can make them, but yes. Yeah.
But at the same time, there's not another book out there that really kind of talks about it in the way that you talk about it. So I'm excited to hear about that, and we'll definitely have you back on.
Great.
Well, Dr. Linda, oh yeah, I can't wait. I'm just so excited about all that. So, Dr. Linda, where can people connect with you and learn not only about the services that you provide, how they can set up a regression with you and learn more about your books, but all the things that you're doing?
Great. Easiest way, Marianne, is for people to go to my website. So my website is Raven, like the bird, R-A-V as in Victor, E-N, Raven Heart, like the heart in your chest, and this is all run together, ravenheartcenter.com.
Well, perfect. And if someone's lucky enough when they're in the Colorado area, they can meet with you in person and have a session, which I think is fabulous because it always makes a big deal. And if not, I know that you do some sessions via phone, which I feel is just absolutely phenomenal as it is anyway.
Yes, and I would say that people need to look at my travel schedule as well. I'm out of Colorado about half the time, traveling to various places in the U.S. and outside the U.S. to guide regressions, to give workshops. So people, that's another important piece, is take a look at my schedule.
And see what's going on there. Well, Dr. Linda, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Marianne, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, that time went so fast. Again, if you're looking to connect with Dr. Linda Backman, you can at her website, ravenheartcenter.com. She's got her books listed there. They're also available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all major retailers. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.